Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, born a cute and beautiful girl named Snow White. She looked like an angel, as if the fairies gave her all the beauty around the world. Her skin was as white as snow, and her hair as black as ebony. Her lips were crimson, and her eyes shone as an onyx. Snow White lived happily with her loving and protective father during her childhood. A big house was witness to her happiness and their love. There was nothing and no one who could break that bond. Everything was happiness in her life until her father decided to get married, and a misfortune happened. Due to unknown reasons, her father died. The evil stepmother called Snow White to her presence, stared at her, and smirked. Snow White, your father doesn't live in this house anymore. You must search for a new place for yourself. Poor Snow White didn't know what to do. She had lived in that house all her life. It was her father's work. But when he died, her evil stepmother took the house and decided it was hers. She wasn't wrong. As a wife, it was her right to take the house. But how will I do that? Where will I go? Snow White asked with tears in her eyes. Her heart hurt, and she was devastated. That's not my problem, my dear, she said. Now this is my property, and you must get out of here. You have until the night. Without more option than to obey, Snow White took her clothes and ran away from that house, her path home. She ran without stopping, ran and ran until she arrived in the forest. For heaven's sake, Snow White said, how did I arrive in the forest? She was not an expert Girl Scout or something like that. She would be lost in that vast forest. I don't have more option than walking and looking for a new place. Maybe a cave, Snow White said to herself. Snow White finally saw a house and she wondered, why is there a house in half of the forest? But she didn't mind. A house was a better option than a cave, and besides, soon started to rain. Then she went to that house and went inside without asking for permission, because in her mind no one could live in that place. Only a witch would live in half of the forest, Snow White assumed, or a criminal. I hope that isn't the case. The house has 7 little beds, 7 little chairs, a large table, 7 spoons, 7 dishes, 7 things of everything. Rain started and soon 7 dwarfs arrived at the house. Snow White looked at them with a bit of fear, but she didn't show it. Who are you, girl? A dwarf who looked angry asked and stared at her. What are you doing here? Snow White couldn't help but get scared when the dwarf talked, but she took a breath and started to explain everything. She explained about her father's death. She spoke of her evil stepmother and how she threw her out of the house. And finally, she explained how she arrived in the forest and how she found that house. It wasn't easy to believe, but after Snow White's speech, the 7 dwarfs decided to believe in her words. Then Snow White and the 7 dwarfs lived together. They went to work in the diamond mine, and she stayed at home and took care of the house. In the afternoon, when the 7 dwarfs returned home, she had cooked before, and all of them sat at the table and ate. It was a good dynamic for them. Snow White had a house, friends, food, and a bed, and the 7 dwarfs had a hot meal and a clean house. However, each one of them had their own problems. Snow White wanted to do something more than clean a house, and the 7 dwarfs couldn't sell diamonds in the palace of the kingdom because of their condition. Nobody wants to do business with a dwarf because people thought they brought bad luck. Days passed without changes until Snow White wanted to know the mine and decided to go the mine with the seven dwarfs. Firstly, they didn't want her to go to the mine. They thought the mine wasn't a safe place for a lady. But Snow White insisted. Without more option than took her with them, the eight left the house on the way to work. Snow White was amazed. She had never seen so many diamonds together in her life. I can't believe it, Snow White whispered to herself. This is incredible. Then she looked at them and told them, "You could be rich with all these diamonds. We can sell them at a good price, Doug," the leader dwarf said. "People in this kingdom thought many ridiculous things about us." Snow White felt sad and angry. How could the people in the kingdom reject someone just for their appearance? But she had no time for resentment, but to do something to change that situation. Then, some days after, Snow White wore her best dress and went to the real dance. A blue and yellow dress moved with the air, and all the people in the palace looked at her with amazement. No one had doubts that she would win the prince's heart. But Snow White wasn't interested in his love, but in his money. "Hello, lady," Prince Florian said. "Do you want to dance?" "I would love to." Snow White talked with Florian and explained to him about the diamonds. Although Prince Florian was looking for a wife, he understood Snow White wasn't there for marriage, but for business. So Prince Florian gave her an appointment with the king and the queen, and a few days later, and after Chop the Mine, Snow White became the only one allowed to sell diamonds to the royal family in the palace. And Snow White and the seven dwarfs lived richly ever after.
It's the end of the month and the weekend. I'ma spend this check, everything on me, yeah. I'ma tip myself, I'ma spend it on myself. I'ma drop it like it's pouring, I'ma pour it on myself.